welcome to the Brownbread Mixtape!
Brown Bread Mixtape.
Very true. So if I say brown, you say bread. Brown. Brown.
You're very welcome to the Brownbread Mixtape podcast, Ireland's only podcast dedicated to spoken word and also independent Irish music. And today's podcast, we have an amazing guest. I'm very happy to welcome today is Fergus Costello, who is the reigning Munster Slam Poetry Champion and also a brilliant performance poet in all other facets. So we're going to talk to him in a moment, but first we're going to kick off the show with a recording that Fergus did with us at our live show last year, and this is extract from a letter to the fella that used to be married to my sister.
You wanted to do something new, reinvent yourself, you said. You are fed up with your humdrum married life and my little sister Mary, or as you called her, your boring Irish dancing Shanos singing wife. So you got yourself a Portuguese lingerie model as a girlfriend. She looked good. Sitting beside you in your new BMW XLYZ series bullshit something or other, only 6 others like it in the country. Went from 0 to 100 miles an hour in 3 seconds flat. Imagine that, you said. 10 miles to the gallon, but you could afford it, what with earning obscene lorry loads of money from your ridiculous project manager's job. Telling other people how to do their job. Even though everybody knew you hadn't got a bog's notion how to tell your metatarsal from your scrotum. You couldn't hang a shelf without help to save your life. You didn't know the difference between a bolt and a screw, but still, hey, you knew how to tell other people how to do their job. You were one of the new breed of Irish people not afraid to take your place at the big boys' table. You weren't messed up with insecurity like your parents' generation. You taken courses in assertiveness and on how to be a winner. Working was for losers, you said. Seeing the size of the cake sitting up on top of the big boys' table, you were going to take a great big slice of it for yourself. You were going all the way to the top and nobody was going to stop you. Realizing your full potential. Investment and consultancy, that was the way to go. Advising other people how to do their jobs, and of course you got yourself a bullshit property portfolio. Villas in Marbella, apartment blocks in Greece. Must have come as a terrible shock when you were arrested in Bangkok airport with 25 kilos of coke in your suitcase. There must be some mistake, you said. I don't know how that got there. Your Portuguese lingerie model girlfriend was nowhere to be seen when you were sent down for 15 years in the Bangkok Hilton. The warders and the governor of the prison, they couldn't believe their luck to have you as their special guest. On call, 24 hours a day if they ever needed somebody to tell them how to do their job. my sister Mary sends her regards. She got a message from me. She wants me to pass it on. Her message is clear. It's unambiguous. Even a dumb nuts moron like you should be able to understand it. It's clear. It's precise. It's concise. It's only got 3 words. Go fuck yourself! And if you don't know how to do that, I'm sure there are some people close at hand. They'd be happy to do it for you.
Very welcome, Fergus, to the podcast. Is this your first ever podcast?
This is my first ever podcast. Yeah.
Great.
Not even sure what a podcast is. But
doesn't matter. It's on the internet. People listen to it. It's like a radio show for other people.
There won't be any probing involved.
No, not too much. We'll only have the mind. Well, we were just chatting before we started the mic rolling here about slam poetry championships and whatnot. You've done 3 All-Ireland slam poetry championships, is that right?
Yeah, in the last 24 months, serious privilege to be allowed to perform at the last 3 All-Irelands, and great fun. Learned a huge amount out of it.
You did the regional stuff first, though. Then you would have done the Munster one first.
Yeah. Basically, it was
because people wouldn't really know how it works. Can you maybe just describe?
Okay. There's regional championships and heats and all of that, and so basically 2 years ago I went down to Limerick and I won the Munster Slam Championship without really having a bog's notion of what the hell I was doing. It all started a couple of months before that. I saw a poster for a slam poetry competition with a first prize of 300 quid. Now, I didn't know what slam poetry was, but I knew what 300 quid was.
Right.
So I made a phone call, and then I took 2 songs of mine, condensed them down to under 3 minutes, performed them.
As poems?
As poems, yeah.
Yeah.
So, and I won the 300 quid, right? So I said, okay, I can live with this.
Yeah. So
then did the Munster thing then after that, and then went up to Dublin for the All-Ireland and met some really wonderful people. I mean, it has been a great adventure, like the people I've met and how kind they have been to me, because I would be, at least twice the age of most of the people at this. It's a young person's sport, right?
I don't think it's a young person's sport, but there's definitely a range of people in there.
There's a range, but I would be in the older part of it. Like,
the elder statesman.
The elder statesman, yeah. And at the same time, like, what the hell is he doing? Kind of hanging in the air, like, But everyone has been very, very kind and very supportive. And
so did you just you just leapt into the poetry thing just on a whim on seeing a poster, was it? Or were you doing stuff before that? No. I mean, I've been, as a hobby, I was writing songs, but not really doing anything with them. And, I know that just seeing you perform poetry, and the listeners will have just heard the piece that you did, I know that you do incorporate a lot of the musical element to it as well, in terms of actually bringing the instrument. We'll talk about your famous Joe Foley Mandola in a minute, but I think the way you perform is quite different to others. I think there's something that's a bit more stream of consciousness, I think, about the work that you do. I'm curious about where is that coming from? Like, is that because they're not even very standard traditional songs that you do either,
No, there's nothing standard or traditional at all. It actually overlaps a number of things, and I've been looking at it myself, in that I use very blunt poetry instruments such as rhyme, repetition, rhythm. I use songwriting techniques, verse, chorus, pre-chorus, middle eight, extended, long, bombastic, solo. Throw them in there. Then I'm telling story they're very much story driven, because I have a I just like stories. I like listening to them from a child. Stories they've always driven me, like, you know, and that's within, whether it is within songs or movies or what I'm reading or whatever. It's I like to be story driven myself, and then most of my stuff is it's coming there. So there's the whole storytelling and storytelling techniques and bringing people down the road for a red herring job, and at the same time you have planted Chekhov's gun, and I'm messing with people's heads, like, you know, and I'm doing it for sheer fun, and it's meant to be entertainment, because people say, well, is it songwriting, is it poetry, is it comedy, is it storytelling, what is it that you do, Fergus? And I'm hoping what I do is entertainment. And then I will say, in the middle of all of that story driven is huge. What I'm trying to do when I perform then is bring people into the action, and I'm putting myself up as a sort of a token lost and confused individual on behalf of everybody else, finding myself in ridiculous situations and for their benefit and for their enjoyment. And at the end of it, like, the story is, a lot of them they're so ridiculous they can't possibly be true, and yet at the same time people will come up to me and say, that one about, you know, is that a true story?
I think that's the number one thing I've heard people say. Like, go on, tell us now, did you really do that? Which is great. You've obviously
it's a fantastic compliment, because it means that they have actually locked in and they've gone along for the ride.
Yeah.
And I have semi-bamboozled them, but in a very nice way. I'm not leaving them feel awkward, and I'd be conscious of that. I would be a huge crowd pleaser in terms of I'm when I'm making stuff up, and I don't write, as you know. There's nothing written down. Okay, I don't write because basically I can't spell.
Is that right?
Yeah, so nothing is written down. At the last All Ireland, Paul Casey said to me, we're going to print all the books that have performed here on the night. And I said, well, you know, my stuff isn't written down. And I'm pretty sure I was the only one there who did not have stuff written down or couldn't lay their hands on something.
So you just memorise these pieces as you write them in your head?
Yeah, I construct them in my head. Yeah, I construct them in my head, and they remain there. It's a psychological problem I have with spelling. Okay.
Right.
I believe that I can't spell, and it goes back to when I was a child, and it's a great story. It's a long story. It's quite sad at the same time.
Yeah.
But that's it. They're not written down. So in actual fact, somebody transcribed the 3 pieces I did at the All Ireland. And he sent them on to me, and it was absolutely mind-boggling to look at stuff for the first time written down. Now, writing down sounds, when you might get it into a fool's cap page, and I had to do this for the lads in the band, but I had somebody correcting my spelling.
Right.
But that was a song of maybe a page at a time. But as you know, a lot of these pieces, I have Arlo-Guthrie disease. 3 minutes ain't good enough for me, right. You know. Yeah. 20 minutes, please.
Yeah.
You know. Alice's Restaurant is, you know, a mind-blowing piece, and I remember 45 years ago when I heard it first, thinking, like, he has some balls to do a song for 20 minutes. You know?
Yeah, but it's a hell of a thing, and it's done right as well. And I think that just to circle back on one of the things you said is really interesting, because it's something I suffer from a little bit as well, in terms of people not knowing what bucket or bracket to put me in when I'm performing. Because you're saying, you know, is he a songwriter, is he a performer, is he a comedian, what is it? Because I would do a lot of the similar stuff, and I just feel like that's really reductive, because they're just things I write. You know what I mean? I don't know that there's a genre. It's just like that's, and they're like, and then when you don't do a funny one, they're like, oh, I thought you were the funny guy. Why are you doing a serious one? Do you know what I mean? Like, do you get a bit of that as well?
Well, as such, there is. I mean, I'd love to have a brand. I'd love to have, as the man says, some sort of a profile. I don't. It's one of the reasons that the Tell Me Lies horse show was difficult to sell, because you're selling something to people that they know nothing about. But even in the construction of it, it was...
Just tell people a little bit about what that is. We can maybe get onto it a little bit more in detail later. But
last year I decided to put a show together of stuff.
Stuff,
yes, stuff. I know, yeah, stuff. And so this friend of mine introduced me to a man called Pius McGrath, who is an actor with directing experience. And he said, okay, look, he'll direct you on this, to help you with this one-man show. So Pius arrives anyway, you see, and he says, well, where's the script?
Yeah.
And I said, there's no script, man. And like, in fairness, he didn't actually get up and walk out. I mean, he stood there like he was wondering, what is this like? But we were in the concert hall in Limerick University at the time. He says, right, okay, what have we got? I says, well, look, I've got about 6 hours, I suppose, that I think could make the cut. And he says, okay, well, just get up there now on stage and give me the best 3 hours. So I got up. He started recording and making notes. And at the end of it, he says, okay, well, look, he says, you've got plenty there for a show. He says, we'll work it out. So
knock it into shape.
Over 4 weeks, we were practicing, and basically he did. It was amazing what he did. He did actually pretty much nothing, which is brilliant of him,
Great directors, isn't it? They're supposed to be invisible.
Yeah, I was there saying, what is he? I thought he was going to be coaching me, but he was just feeding me the confidence, saying, because the big thing, one of the big things that I'm trying to actually get is get the confidence on stage. Because when I brought the band down there and the Pound Street band, at the end of it they said, right, okay, Fergus, the band is good, the songs are good, your lyrics are very good, but you look as if you're like Joe Public has just wandered in off the street by mistake and stand up there. Like you need to own every inch of that stage.
What, and you were looking terrified or what?
Yeah, just out of place. Like fronting a band. I'd never been in a band before. Here I was fronting an 8-piece band.
Right.
Can you imagine what it looked like?
How did you pull them together? Were they just friends and people you knew and musicians? And
people I knew and people who had over the years admired my songs, and when they heard that I was trying to put something together with the songs, and the songs are different. They'd say, I don't know how you come up with those songs, because, and even as musicians, they were even telling me, well, actually, one particular song I had to, for 20 years, it was one I'd done for my daughter years ago. I thought it was in the key of G. It turned out it was in the key of D. That's how un-musician-like I am. But these guys came round but I need, and is to be able to have it inside my own head that I can do this. I want to do it, but for the benefit of the audience, so that there will be no doubt in their mind that I know exactly what I'm doing, even though I don't. Sure. But in the meantime,
but I think that's entertainers. Like it's the grand bluff. Like you know what I mean. You can be sure Bono's shitting himself some nights when he goes up and does a big show. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's still brilliant at what he does, but I'd say he's nervous. You know, and that's part of it. Well, all of that is, I suppose, by way of a long rambling introduction into kind of. I'm curious to hear what your background is, because I know. For listeners, they'll be interested to know that you have a fine art background, in that sense, that you've done sculpture and art, and I want you to maybe even just explain kind of where you trained or how you trained and the kind of work that you've done leading up to the music and poetry side of things.
Okay, I went to art school in Dublin years ago, and I trained as in art and design education.
Right.
Now, I had family at the time, 2 or 3 kids. It was kind of mad, and I was working at the same time, painting and decorating around the city, drawing the doll, and generally just being... I got very little chance to do much in art school at this, because the family life was very, very busy. Anyway, cut a long story short, teaching practice was just... It fried my head. The kids, even the 12-year-olds, were just terrorised me. So I said, I better go out and try and learn how, have a bit of confidence in art and my knowledge of it. So do it for a little bit and then go back to teaching it. So that's what I did, but I never went teaching it. And so I started up my own business, worked for myself as a sculptor and painter and designer, working in the area of sacred space. And basically what I did was I decided, I came to the conclusion that I had a calling to interpret the Christian mystery with my artwork, the visual arts. Yeah. And that has been the subject of my work for over 33 years. And that's it, keep telling the same story over and over and over and over again.
It's a simple story, but it's a
beautiful. It's the story of love. It's like I'm drawn to this.
You've shown me some of the work, and I mean it's remarkable. I think just for people to get a sense of the scale of the things we're talking about here.
Yeah, well, everything from a room for two to a cathedral for 2,500. And everything in between.
Yeah, that's absolutely astonishing. And I mean, we're talking about large scale wooden sculptures, stained glass. I mean, you seem to work in a lot of mediums as well.
All the way across. Again, it's a question of clients would call me and say, and then I go to see them. So then it's okay. What is going to work here, and what is available here? And you might have certain conditions that you have to work with. Be cognitive of what has gone before. It may not be starting from scratch, so you have to consider the existing architecture, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So being flexible and open to using every materials, and at the end of the day, I'm just making pictures, telling a story. So it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's paper and glue. There's no difference really. It's between any of they all have their own challenges.
Yeah, sure.
And once you're up for that, okay.
Do you think any of it had any impact? Like, I mean, obviously you're a creative person, you know, you create, and now you're in the space of where you're writing songs and making poems. Do you think they're coming from the same place, or are you tapping into something different for the art side of things and then the musical poetry side of things?
Oh no, it's all coming from the same place.
Yeah. The tree of life.
It's all, I mean, these are pure gifts, like, you know, I mean, and it's up to me to share them, like, you know, it's as simple as that. I mean, it's...
Do you think that idea is true? Sort of you're channeling something grander that you're just pushing out there into the world?
Having worked as an artist for over 30 years, I do know that there is a difference between the average artist and the average man in the street. I do know that. Like I, for years, I mean, I had scores of people come to my studio from all over the world to work and say, can I work with you for a month or 3 months or 6 months or a year?
Right.
Or can I apprentice to you? And it was not, I won't say the disaffected, but it was arty people.
Right.
Okay, and people who saw things differently. That's artists see and hear things differently to the ordinary Joe. So that's whether it's partly coming through genetics for the individual and the rearing and all of that. But that's how that's the person made, and that's their uniqueness is they actually think and see and hear in a different way. Yeah. And then their job as artists is to take that and to put it in such a format that it can be given to the rest of the pool who actually haven't got the gift of putting that together but love to have it done for them. And those guys can do the plumbing, which I fucking can't do.
Yeah, sure. Was there art or artists in your family previous? Do you think it came from anywhere special?
My father was quite artistic, but he was an army man, okay? Right. He was a soldier. But he had a keen interest in the arts. I remember when he came back from the Congo after serving with the UN troops, the peacekeeping force, he brought back African art, sculptures, painting, and African music.
Yeah.
And like, I mean,
that would have blown your brain open at that age, would it?
Absolutely did. And I loved putting this stuff on and listening to it, like, you know. Yeah. And it was different. And I liked listening to stuff that was different. Like when I was a child, definitely listening to the radio before the television came along, the drama programs, loved them.
Yeah.
Cathy and Heathcliff, you'd hear them. They're out, and you're glued there, and you can hear them out in the moor. And Dan Dare would be up next, coming from outer space. You know, so I listened to all of that and loved that whole story-driven element of stuff like that. People telling the stories and full-scale dramas and movies. Loved movies as a kid, like, you know. And then music opened up then. At the time, it was mostly homegrown. There was trad. The folk scene had the Dubliners were doing great things, combining folk and trad and opening up new things. The Chieftains were out. Planksy were coming onto the scene. At home, then we had Rory Gallagher, in Cork. Like, I mean, we knew that we'd get at least 2 concerts a year.
And he was one of the all-time greats.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
He's still kind of not as well known as he really should be, isn't he?
he was never that one. He was never one for putting himself across. He was a gigging man, and I mean that's why he was such a hero of ours. He was only a few years older than us. He was like an older brother. We looked up to him. I mean, he was. He had us. He just had something that we just loved, and his performance was like he was a very, very generous performer in that we just stood there looking at this guy, you know.
But that's interesting. I mean, I think it's probably a good point maybe for us to take a break and have a listen to one of your own pieces performed for us now. I know you've brought this famous Joe Foley Mandola, so before we hear the song, maybe tell everybody what we have here. It's a beautiful looking instrument, so maybe just give us an insight.
This is made by the wonderful Joe Foley in Rathfarnham, and it is a mandola is somewhere between a mandolin and a bouzouki.
Right.
If you got it. And then I have it tuned mandolin fiddle tuning. The trad boys go for a little bit more modal. I never got onto it.
Right. So it's tuned to
EADG.
EADG. Okay, so almost like the top of a guitar. Then.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And the song you're going to play, or the piece, it's not really a song. It's a poem, I guess, with musical accompaniment. I'd say almost. Would you say?
Yeah. It is, yeah, and again, this I'm only doing this recently. Is like with the spoken word pieces, bringing Joe Foley along for the ride, and I'm playing with it at the moment as to okay, can I bring this down the road with me, or is it going to work? And for the time being, I'm happy with the experiment, and. It is adding something, and it is helping me. Number of people have said to me like that when I do pick up Joe Foley when I'm on stage, that there is a special relationship between us, that something changes it, and it offers that within the course of performance. Because what I'm doing is I'm telling you a number of individual stories as such, and I'm taking on different personas.
Sure.
Part of their personas, part of them are kind of part of me, but they're really alter egos.
Sure.
And I'm just taking these different characters. And then when I use Joe Foley then for a number of these, it does add another flavour again, and it gives another dimension.
Yeah.
You know? So it helps in terms of the variety, and I think as well, I think that it's bringing something else that I'm not even sure of, but I think it's kind of good for me.
Yeah, great. What's good for you is good for you. Keep it going. All right, I'll just set up the mic here. So we're going to listen to a piece that you've titled "The Comeback King." So in your own time, Fergus, take it away.
They don't call me the comeback king for nothing. Like Muhammad Ali in Kinshasa, in the rumble in the jungle, I know what it's like. Be hanging on to the ropes for dear life, taking one hell of a bet and playing for time, waiting for the right moment to skip free and dance once more like a butterfly. I know what it's like to see all hope die, with my back up against the wall and a voice inside my head telling me to go down. Stay down. I know what it's like to stand at the side of an open grave and watch as my son's broken body, sealed in a box, was lowered into the ground. I have felt the primordial sound of grief rip set free from my very core, before erupting out through me like the howl of a wild beast. And in that instant, to know with absolute certainty I could never wish that on anyone, even my own worst enemy. I know all about bounce back ability, even though that's not a real word and can't be found in Webster's or any other half-arsed kiss-me-arse compendium of syllables. But for most of my life, I've been blessed with the knack of being able to pull rabbits out of hats. Impressive-looking rabbits from even the most unlikely, depressing-looking hats. But lately, hey, it appears to me either my arms have grown considerably shorter, or else hats these days are an awful lot deeper than they used to be. Because the only rabbits that I can grab hold of all seem to have some virulent form of myxomatosis, and they are all in serious trouble. Now they can hear inside their tiny little rabbit heads or tiny little rabbit voices telling them to go down and stay down. But I have no choice but to keep on. Can't afford to listen to voices telling me my race is run, so I guess I'll just roll up my sleeve, delve deep one more time, see if I can grab me a rabbit that does not have the pox. Preferably a rabbit with a twinkle in his eye whose sting is still intact, with a resurrection song singing in his heart, and a voice inside his head telling them to keep on, keeping on. All is not lost, hope must never be forgotten. Have no choice but to stay strong. Hey, after all, they don't call me the comeback king for nothing.
That was fantastic. That was fantastic, Fergus. The Joe Foley Mandola.
The Joe Foley Mandola.
It adds such a layer to it all, doesn't it?
It's allowing me, in one sense, to it's another millimetre from me to get to the point where I'm feeling comfortable to know that I'm not going to let them down.
Yeah, that's
you know.
amazing. Yeah, no.
The thing is, I want to entertain at a high level.
Yeah, sure.
Right. There's 5 people that I had the privilege of seeing live doing a one-man show. 2 hours of a one-man show, just coming out on stage and holding the house in the palm of their hand.
Yeah.
2 of them are since gone. Spike Milligan, God rest his soul.
Yeah.
Christy Hennessy, God rest his soul.
Brilliant.
The
Brilliant
other
artists.
the other 3 are Billy Connolly, John Kenny and Neil Tobin. And I had the privilege of being to their shows over 2 hours, and for them to work magic at a very, very high level. Now, you may think, what am I thinking with it? That I want to try and get as close to that as possible.
Those are artists at the highest level.
At the highest level, yeah. Absolutely, yeah. Privileged. But even in retrospect, looking at them, even in my own mind's eye, and seeing how they did this is hugely beneficial and instructive for me.
Well, you have to have those type of artists to aspire to get to that level, because you see that when they're operating at that level, you understand that there's the magic, obviously, and the talent. But I think if you yourself do this kind of work, I think you understand the amount of work they've put in to get there, to do that, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's what's fascinating on some level as well, just understanding how they make it look so effortless as well. I mean, somebody like Billy Connolly, you know, makes it look like he's having a chat.
Yeah.
But he's actually got these carefully constructed routines that are very good. He's probably not at the peak of his powers anymore, I think. But when he was in his full flight, I'd say there was hard to beat somebody like Billy Connolly. And Tobin is an incredible Irish artist, like incredible actor.
Incredible actor and again, his show, to be able to come on in the middle of a predominantly funny show and to put in something from the hostage and nail the audience to their seats for 15 minutes in the middle of, a funny show
Yeah.
is brilliant. And I mean, I've seen all of those guys do that.
Yeah. Tabine acted with my dad, would you believe, back in the day. Interesting fact of the day there. But I'm also keen to just talk to you a little bit more about... you talked about sort of spirituality there, and I know you've talked to you're somebody who meditates, and I found that really interesting because it's something I've tried to access for myself, but I found very challenging. Would you mind talking about that as well? That you meditate?
No, Did you not get the memo from my people? Sorry, Mr. Ryan.
Oh, yeah,
a list of questions that you were not supposed to ask, right?
Right, we'll strike it. Let's talk about drinking.
Okay, go right to meditation. What do you want to know?
No, I was curious. Like, I know that you spend quite a bit of time meditating, and I wonder how that sort of influences even just being an artist and how you work. Because you're saying you don't actually write things down, so I feel that's probably you calming your mind as well to sort of be able to put that work in there.
Yeah, it is very much to do with calming, and like a prayer life has been important for me for most of my life, and meditation is part of the prayer life, and it's to keep me some way half orientated in the right direction. It's as simple as that. Because if I don't, man, I'm out into the long grass. I'm lost. I mean, I know from my empirical fucking history there in front of me, man. Line them up like, look at all the crashes he's fucking had, all the fucking brick walls he's hit. Out of blindness. So in order for me to be able to kind of navigate half decent on the right road, I do need to keep myself orientated properly.
Right. And how often would you meditate in a day?
Twice a day, morning and evening.
Really? Yeah. And you'd spend a good time doing it as well?
40 minutes a piece.
Wow, 40 minutes a piece. That's quite a long meditation session. Even that's quite a long chunk out of your day, even.
Yeah, well, prayer is important.
Of course it is. No, I'm fascinated by it. I have to say it is important, and I think that the busy mind is one of the biggest challenges of the modern day. Do you know what I mean? I think everybody has this continuous partial attention where there's Facebooks and YouTubes and people talking and things and phones going off and texts, and nobody has that moment where they actually just quieten things down a lot of the time. Some of us don't have time.
Yeah. Well, it's really, to be honest, it's out of necessity with me. It isn't as if I really have a choice.
Right.
If I don't, I mean,
it's a
disaster.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, I admire you very much for that, because I think it's a remarkable thing to be able to sit down and spend that time for yourself as well. What I was hoping to ask you just before we launch into your first choice of the day of performances from our back catalogue was, what do you reckon, I mean, this is an almost impossible question to answer, but what do you reckon is one of the best things you've written, or one of the things that you're most proud of recent times that you've written?
Okay, current favourites, I'll be honest.
Yeah, current favourites.
Current favourites. The Comeback King.
Yeah, well, Jesus, it's a great piece.
It's a cracker. I'm very happy with that.
Yeah.
And extract from a letter to the fella that used to be married to my sister.
Great.
I did that for the first time. I think, I don't know if I told you this story before, but last year when you were doing the show on the Twisted Pepper.
Yes.
And you asked me up. And I had a set list of kind of stuff that, okay, this is tried and tested and it's safe and that's fine, and I'm in Dublin now. I don't want to be, falling over myself, showing myself up, to my city cousins. But of course, as always, changed my mind. And that piece, the extract from the letter, was only about 2 or 3 weeks old. And about the night or two before, I picked up the Joe Foley. It was a spoken word piece. I picked up the Joe Foley and I put this loop in. And that's how ill prepared that piece was. But I was just so anxious to get it across because I liked it so much myself. I was really, really hoping that it would go down as a favourite, and it's a serious crowd pleaser.
Yeah, it's a super piece, and I'm very glad we could play it at the start as well. And on that, just that idea of, releasing a piece for the first time in the world.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody can really describe that, but how much of what you do? I mean, you talk about being an entertainer and trying to entertain at the highest level. Much of what you write must be with that performance in mind.
Oh yes, totally.
And
Totally.
You're thinking, as I write it, going, how is this going to play?
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you ever write anything that doesn't see the light of day? Or if that stuff doesn't see the light of day, where's that stuff going for you?
Good question. Some of it might just not pass my own kind of critic. Right? As in, it may not, like, as in, where's the audience for this?
Yeah.
Right? Would I do this if my daughters were in the audience?
Right. And they've been in the audience, haven't they?
And they've been in the audience, yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, some of it doesn't. Some of it doesn't. Until I actually... The odd time to say, right, okay, well, look, that has to be an after midnight show.
Right.
Simple as that, right?
The X-rated Fergus Costello show.
Right, okay. And then stuff that will be tried out, and what comes back is, well, look, it's not... Straight away I work with the feedback. Well, okay, that one has to be dragged off to hospital and fixed up, or maybe I'll come back and cannibalise it later. But it's not quite... There's something not quite right with that yet. It's not hitting
the notes
spots.
you want.
It's not hitting the notes that I want with the people.
And in feedback terms, like how do you take that feedback? Like, are you talking about a reaction from an audience? Are you talking about somebody who you trust to come up and go, Fergus, I'm not sure about that, the way you were doing that? Or are there trusted people who you take on board that kind of feedback? Or where's that coming from?
That's a good question there. A lot of it would be, okay, random from the audience, how the audience reacts straight away. As in, even just, I would try and record, even though I'm bad at not doing it, every performance, so that when I can go home, I can sit down, I can replay it, and I can make notes to know what went wrong, what didn't go wrong, and what worked and what didn't. So, do I have people who will come to me? There are some people who will tell me straight up, yeah, my daughters now will say, no problem with that.
That's probably years of training then, isn't it?
Well, it's like, they have absolutely nothing to lose. Like, you know.
I think also there's a funny one there though as well. I find is like, say, especially when I would write a sketch or something, I'll get up and it doesn't get a laugh, and you think, oh gosh, maybe that wasn't funny. But then you'll do it again at a different audience, and it will get a laugh. You know, so it's sometimes hard to base those judgments on one performance.
It is, and this happened to me about 2 years ago. I did this piece called "A Man Called Horse," and it's about Richard Harris.
Yeah.
Now it is a cracker. Now it's mad. It's out there, right?
And that's even going by your mad standards.
Yeah, and it goes to almost 10 minutes, right? And I did it for the first time in Limerick. And I don't know whether they were coming from a particularly sad funeral or whether they thought I was taking the piss out of poor Richard. But I vowed that was it. I went home that night and I said, well, that's it. That's going nowhere. That's dead. It was that... There was absolutely nothing came back from it, and it's nearly a 10-minute piece. But a year later, I did it down in Cork, and it set fire to the house. Yeah. The exact same piece, and it was right through set fire to the house. Yeah. So, yeah, you can't, and that one very, very, very nearly never came back out again.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? How that stuff ends up. Right, well listen, let's take a quick break and listen to your first choice from our back catalogue. You've picked a poem by Abby Oliveira. We're going to play The Death of the Dollar. Tell us just a little bit about why you picked Abby and what it is that you like about her poetry.
I met Abby for the first time 2 years ago at the All Ireland in the International Bar. She was performing that day and she absolutely blew me away as a performer. Got to meet her, a lovely, lovely girl. Then the following year, the All Ireland was in Derry, and she was the one who was organising it. So, got to meet her again. It was nearly a full year later. But just love her. She's a lovely person. She's got a great heart, and as a performer and as a writer, what do I like? She's such a generous performer in that she is giving, she's opening up there, she's leaving very, very little kind of armour there at all. She puts herself out there, and it's wonderful.
Yeah.
It's just wonderful.
I think there's something about some performers where they're just instantly magnetic, and I would say that's true of Abby. She has real command of an audience, not only just from the presence of her person, but also just those words seem to really hit home.
Oh, yes.
And very, very poetic. You know, I mean, they're not, some of the stuff is not easily accessible stuff, but I think what her great skill is to actually make them very manageable and digestible for an audience, you know, because poetry is, as we've said so many times before, it's a tough sell.
It's a tough sell, but yeah, and that's where she blows it out of the water in terms of she's the exception to the rule in terms of it's a tough sell, because I would sit down and I would watch Abby and listen to Abby for an hour on stage. I mean, that's, people would say to me, okay, how long should you give a guest poet? 15, 20 minutes, and my answer to that one is like, if they're good enough, leave them on all night.
Yeah.
But what the reality is that after, for the most part, 15 minutes, and that is the limit, because you just can't take it anymore.
Well, this is Abby Oliveira performing at the Brownbread Mixtape last year with us, and this is a piece entitled "The Death of the Dollar."
They are shivering in the cold to the rhythmic quivering of begging bowls, beckoning them to dance for the death of the dollar. In the eyes of the guys selling plastic flowers, the hours hang like laden plastic bags. They all stand here for the death of the dollar. The seconds gush through gutters and down drains just like money. They run away with the clay foundations of the empire and even the playing field. The sewage stinks like fiat currency as it creeps up to their feet. Underneath the concrete of their great cities, London, the Vatican, Washington, D.C., washed into the sea. Their symbols of liberty are holograms. Their mantra is blessed be the meek, for the meek rarely rock this vessel. And when this vessel runs aground, smiting towns and cities and all the pretty private property where they used to play as kids, when the mighty obelisk penises and sacred garden arches go brick by brick, whose phoenix will rise from the ashes? Will they finally understand the nature of their inheritance? They are the crown of creation, grappling with starched collars as if to free themselves from the loop of a hangman's noose. On the tube, they are cybernetic, subhuman, and dressed to kill, stealing themselves for the death of the dollar. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
And we're back, and that was Abby Oliveira with The Death of the Dollar, and that can also be found on our YouTube channel as well if you want to seek it out, the Brownbread Mixtape, and we have a couple of other bits and pieces by Abby up there. Abby performs, or certainly did perform for a while, with a group called the Poetry Chicks, and she can be seen often touring around Ireland. I think she has an album coming out soon, so keep an eye out for her. Okay, Fergus, we're going to do a little fun round here now of questions. So I've a series of rapid fire questions for you, boss. Okay, and
if any of these are on the list that my people gave to you, right? Okay,
there'll be a red buzzer will go off here. Yeah, actually, I tried this with Colm Keegan when we had him in for the podcast. We had a bit of crack. He said, "These aren't rapid fire. These aren't from your gut questions. These are things I have to think about for ages. But sure, do your best anyway. We'll see how we go." So, first question. Who would be some of your favourite Irish writers of all time?
Van Morrison.
Yeah. Of any genre, music, poetry, novelists.
Flann O'Brien.
Fantastic, yeah. That'll do, yeah. Geez, they're two greats, two towering greats there. Where's one of your favourite places to go for a bit of peace and quiet?
Assisi.
Assisi. Very nice. I've never been. Sounds like I should go then. What was the first album you ever bought?
Rory Gallagher.
Rory Gallagher. On vinyl, I take it, was
On
it?
vinyl.
Yeah. What book have you read the most times?
Wow. Actually, the book I've read the most times is a book called Pocoon.
By Spike Milligan?
By Spike Milligan.
I've never read it. Shame on me.
And I actually it was my favourite book for long haul flights. There was a time where, like over a period of years, that was standard issue for me, long haul flight.
Great.
So that's why I read that so many times.
Great, I'll have to have a read of it. Pick maybe one or two or even three painters whose work that you love. Can you do that?
Wow, okay.
Have I stumped you?
No, you haven't, but there's a clatter load of them. But we'll say Vincent van Gogh.
Fantastic, yeah.
Rembrandt and Modigliani.
All absolutely astonishing painters for their own reasons. Have you been to the Rembrandt Museum in Holland?
No, I have never been to Holland.
Yeah, the Rembrandt Museum is well worth a visit.
I'm threatening that, literally just to go to see paintings.
Yeah. Right, are you a mug of tea or a cup of coffee man?
I'm both.
Are you? Yeah, okay. Here's another one for you. What's the best piece of writing about Ireland, do you think?
Wow. What's the best piece of writing about Ireland? I don't know, I'll have to pass it.
Alright, pass, no bother. You talked a bit about films making big impressions on you as a kid. Maybe could you name a film that made a big impression on you, and maybe why?
I think in terms of where it came, I was used to going to the cinema watching pretty much B-movies, right? And the first spaghetti western I saw, I was quite taken aback by it because it was very, very different. I used to watch a lot of westerns, right? But more in the kind of Audie Murphy, John Wayne type of style. So hearing Ennio Morricone was mind-blowing, right? And the cinematography that they were using was quite obviously different. And I remember just waking up at that particular point and thinking, wow, there's way more to movies than because I'd been looking at semi-poor standard in one sense, and of a type. Yeah. And this one just came up and...
Was it one of the Clint Eastwood ones?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They're such a unique piece of film, aren't they? Yeah.
And they still hold up today.
I think they do as well, actually. I think they do. They're not for everyone, though.
No.
But they definitely do. Great. Well, let's try another question. We're not rapidly firing through them.
They're
so much.
definitely rapid firing.
No, we're going slow, but sure,
I've dodged one already.
You did good, yeah. No, you're doing
There's
right.
no time to just come across the room. I'd be very slow.
Yeah, well, you should have done the politician's answer. I'm very glad you asked me that. Right, we'll go for another one.
Right.
What's your weakness? Mine's chocolate, by the way.
What's my weakness?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Too tough?
There's just too many of them.
Okay, that's your weakness right there. Grand, we move on. If you could speak another language tomorrow, what do you think it would be?
Oh, I'd go for Irish.
Good man. Favourite poem? Do you have one?
Probably don't really, no, as in a one-off.
I know that's a hard question.
Yeah.
I know.
No, if there was, I suppose, one favourite poet kind of that linked with the stuff that I read most would in actual fact be William Blake.
Very good. I haven't read a lot of Blake, I have to admit. He was a painter as well, wasn't he?
He was, yeah.
Yeah.
That's how I got this book one time as a present with all his paintings in it, and then I had the poems as well. So,
right. Is he The Doors of Perception? Is that William Blake? Yeah. Great. Are you a fan of television at all?
Oh, I watch, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a favourite TV show of all time?
Telly Bingo.
Telly bingo, great. Any reason why? It's the lowest and highest form of art.
Yeah, it just blows my head, man.
That's the best answer ever. Okay. Funniest person of all time?
Oh, wow.
Dead or alive?
Funniest. I suppose some of my own kids are hilariously funny.
That's a good answer.
The 5 guys I mentioned earlier were all very funny guys.
Tabine, Billy Connolly, John Kenny,
Christy Hennessy and
can't remember the
Spike Milligan.
Spike Milligan, of course.
There is, I do enjoy people's sense of humours, and I do. I like I will steer conversations, even kind of very serious ones, into the ridiculous pretty quickly. To kind of put myself at ease and also put other people at ease, in the sense that even like work-wise and that, it's that because I think the way the job should be done, it should be done in the best possible environment, in the best possible atmosphere. Like the idea of driving a job home and the end result is what all that counts. I think the way the thing goes on and the way the thing happens is very important, because they're the moments that we live. The final piece of work that's there, a chapel or a church or whatever it is, and there's 2 years into it, but if people have been treated like dogs and hurt and abused for the sake of this, then that's not the way I would work. So I would be using humour a lot of the time and keeping the environment as light and as friendly as possible, because I think that's a much better way to go than cracking a whip and acting like a cunt.
Yeah, sure. And humour is the great equaliser, isn't it? Like, it takes all in. I always say that you've mastered a language if you can master humour in a language, because it's got that complexity to it, that you're able to make people laugh in a different culture. Great, that was a long answer, but a great one to our rapid fire question.
How rapid is this, man?
Rapid, man. Bleeding
rapid. Next, class.
Next question. You're from Cork. I would love for you to tell everyone what's one of your favourite things about Cork.
It's a nice town.
It is a nice town.
It's a nice town, yeah. Now, some deluded Cork people still cling to the vain notion that Cork is a city, right?
Right.
But even though just some jumped up Norman invading fucker in the 12th century with marching boots decided to issue a decree whereby Cork could have the cathedral, thereby being able to call itself a city, we all know Cork is a town.
That's the same as Waterford is specified as a city as well, but I don't think it really is. Yeah, it is a nice town. I have a lot of fond memories from spending time in Cork. Are you a Bob Dylan fan?
Oh yeah.
Do you have a favourite album or a favourite song? I know that's almost impossible again. It's like pick your favourite kid.
I'll pick one here, just kind of semi-random, but it's kind of there's a train going through it. Hurricane, because he goes on with it. You know, it's not a 3.5 minute, 4 minute piece.
No.
And again, getting back to Arlo Guthrie and Alice's Restaurant, guys who are willing to cut loose like that and go tell a story. It's a brilliant, brilliant story. And that sums up so much that I like about songs that are story driven. And then when he's in the groove there, he said, well, I could leave it at 3 or 4 verses, but no, I'm going for broke here.
Yeah. I think that's a fantastic one. I heard a story about him recording that because it's from the Desire album, which is a really special album, I think. I'm a massive fan of Isis, which is, if you don't talk about storytelling, it's an astonishing story piece. But on the Hurricane, apparently, Bob Dylan would showed up in the studio, told everyone the chords, essentially, said, right, we'll lash into it, here we go. And they were like, oh okay, let's go. They play it through, and he says, okay, that's good, let's go, let's move on. And they're like, well, I'm not sure, could we give it one more go? and he had to be talked into doing a second take of it because there was like some fluff in the second half of the song. Had to be talked into it, did a second take and said, right, that's it, I'm not doing anymore. Yeah. And if you listen to the recording, there's a small edit in the middle of it where they piece the two takes together. So the first half of the first take and the second half is the second take. But apparently that was his style. He did the same with Emmylou Harris on that record. Like he'd give her the sheet, say, right, here we go, and off we go. Yeah. And most of those songs are first takes as well, which is kind of an amazing way to
phenomenal
operate.
Stuff. Oh yeah.
Amazing way.
I mean, he's without a doubt. I mean, anyone at all who's interested in kind of modern writing, Bob Dylan, like you must listen, like, you know.
Yeah, I always say if you're a songwriter worth any salt, like whether you like him or not, you have to listen to Bob Dylan. Like he is one of the greatest songwriters of all time. We're still rapidly firing through these.
Moving on.
Yeah, okay.
Oh man.
I know this is a great thing because a lot of the folks I interviewed, they're a very heavy internet presence. They're tweeting and they're Facebooking and all that. You're not a big man for the internet. I know you're like you're not hugely present on the internet. Do you reckon? Now this is a genuine question because I have my own thoughts on it. But do you think the internet is bringing us closer together or it's driving us further apart?
Sure, look, it's a great tool for bringing people together. There's no doubt about that. Whether they want to use it that way or not, it could be counteractive in that you could be sitting on your own, as the man says, for hours on end when you could actually be really together with somebody, do you know?
Sure.
But it's like everything else. It's kind of like within reason.
Yeah, sure.
Do you know?
Sure, yeah. I don't think there's a right answer to that. Yeah. I'd be curious. I was just curious to hear what you thought. Okay, and we've got a couple more here. Are you a Beatles or a Rolling Stones man?
I got to see the Rolling Stones. I never got to see the Beatles. But if it was either or, I'd be Beatles.
Would you, good man? And then the last one for you, which is to complete this sentence: the best thing about being a writer is
telling stories.
Hi, great stuff. Okay, we'll go for a sketch selection now. So you picked actually an interesting one. I guess you must have been there when we performed this one, the Foley's sketch.
It was in Waterford. Remember the time we went on the road and we did the show in Waterford?
Yes, that's right.
And,
in Downs' Bar in Waterford.
That's right, yeah. And my recollection was I was just been absolutely blown away by Gus and Eva, and it was literally how Gus morphed into different characters visually there in front of us. Grace and I, we looking at him, and it was just an astonishing piece of acting.
Great. Well, both of them are remarkable actors, and it is a real privilege to write for them as well. So I guess I probably won't even preface the sketch. I'll let people take it away as it is, but just I suppose there's a bit of interest. A Foley artist is somebody who makes sound effects, and that's kind of the premise behind this, and these are the Foleys, the family. So this is a sketch by the Brownbread Players.
Right, come on off to bed with you.
But, Mom, will you tell me a story?
Not tonight, Stevie.
But, Mom, you promised. I really want to hear the story.
All right, then, but just a short one.
And can you do the sound effects for the story, Dad? Can you do sound effects?
Oh, I don't know, son. I'm drinking here. Just get your mum to do it, will you?
But, Daddy!
Okay, so come on, we'll do it. I couldn't give a shit.
Story!
All right, come on, make this quick, will you, Nuala? I'm fucking locked.
Okay, shush now. Once upon a time on a Halloween night in Dublin... on the north side of Dublin...
Fuck off, you cunt.
3 little crows were planning a night of mischief. But not just any crows, they were 3 pink crows. Which didn't necessarily mean that they were gay. But the crows were tired of never getting any respect at all. So they decided to steal the letter N from the alphabet.
What? Fucking Jesus, Nuala. I mean,
under the cover of night, they made their way to the south side to steal the letter N from the alphabet.
But why were they stealing the letter N, Mummy?
Yeah, that's a good question, Nuala. Why in fuck's name were they stealing the letter N from the alphabet?
Because they realised that if they owned the letter N, they could change from being crows to crowns, and then they would be kings of the world.
That's madder than a smoked sandwich. Like, do you expect me to do a sound effect for that or what?
Yeah, come on, love. And of course, if they owned the letter N, they would control all the coolest words like nostrils. And Nirvana. So the crows set off for Walkinstown, where the alphabet is kept in a maximum security purple warehouse.
You will not get near the alphabet here in my purple warehouse in my town, Walkinstown. Were you supposed to be Christopher Walken just now? Yes! Little Stevie, I was indeedy. That was good, Daddy.
Cheers, I thought it was great, actually, too.
As the crows entered the purple warehouse, they triggered an enormously loud alarm.
Woo, woo! It's the sound of the police. Woo, woo!
The crows panicked, and amidst the blaring alarm, the flashing lights and wild confusion, they knocked over all the letters like a row of dominoes. In a flurry, they grabbed the letter N, leaning against the wall, and flew back to their nest on the north side, which is approximately 2 miles away as the crow flies.
Look, Nuala, I love you. There's no denying that, all right? But in fairness, what is your fucking problem? Do you expect me to do a sound effect for that, do you?
Go on, love. But when the crows returned to their nest, they realised that they had made a huge mistake. Instead of the letter N, they had in fact grabbed the letter Z.
Right.
Is that it? The three crows started to cry. There wasn't much they could do with the Z except sleep on it. After a good crowy night of sleep, they woke up the next morning smiling because they had a brainwave, and together they tipped the Z over onto its side, and hey presto, it was a letter N. The newly made letter N magically split apart into 3 perfectly small pieces that floated on top of each of the crows' heads and instantly turned into small golden crowns.
Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Why am I so fucking broke?
The 3 crows were now kings of the world, and out they flew into the night sky, circling over every Halloween bonfire in their new kingdom. And Ireland was no longer poor and useless, and everybody lived happily ever after.
Yes! The end?
The end.
Da-da-da-da-da.
And that was the Foley's, a sketch that I wrote for the Brownbread Players, and we performed at, as Fergus said, at the Imagine Festival in Downs' Bar as part of the Brownbread Mixtape when we were lucky enough to be part of that. Last year, I think it was, or perhaps even 2 years ago at this stage. Okay, Fergus, we're just curious here. I'm just going to ask you a couple of questions about kind of influences and inspirations. Are there writers, I know we've talked a bit about films you enjoyed and writers you liked and musicians you liked, but are there any particularly big and sort of landmark people in your life that have really influenced yourself as an artist, I guess, is what I'm talking about?
I mentioned Van Morrison earlier, and I will mention him again because extraordinary musician and a body of work that over 45 years with me, I'd say I would have listened and been more influenced by Van Morrison than anybody else.
Really?
And not just as in the sense that, okay, here is music I like and a genre of music I like and a fan of Van Morrison music, as a music buff, but what the actual music did do for me.
Right.
This Van Morrison's music lifted me, carried me. It brought me through times and gave me something that I can't put words on. But the guy has soul, obviously.
Oh, without a doubt.
Right?
Yeah.
And I can hear it, and it resonates with me. So it's beyond kind of musical style or anything like that. I put it on to listen because it brings me into a place which makes me feel good.
Yeah.
You know? And in the midst of a lot of questioning in my head of like, where am I? Where do I fit in? And all those kind of things. And I'm not sure, should I like this or should I like that? Maybe I should pretend to like that because that's cool. But I never had to pretend to like Van Morrison and just bought his albums over and over again, lost them and gave them away.
Like the things you always love, you give them away, right?
So that would be absolutely huge. And on that basis that this is soul, I'm just listening to soul, and then some form or other without being able to understand it or analyse it or anything like that, his music...
he's very poetic as well.
Oh,
I think that might be a big part of why I respond to him a lot as well. I mean, the obvious ones like Astral Weeks, just still I could listen to that album over and over. But there's such, like you said, there's such a wealth of albums there. St. Dominic's Preview is a fantastic record as well. You know, there's so many of them. Even the more recent stuff is good. You know, he's not turned into a shit artist who's still churning it out. You know.
No, I think that he is credit to him as a musician that he has kept the standards up so much, like, you know, and again there is a certain fascination with the fact that he isn't the happiest man in the world.
Yes, yeah. Right? Well, I think a lot of people sort of are interested in that side of things more than the music.
And then it's because of the fact that he isn't the most happiest man in the world that he can actually produce this music, which seems, for me, it works with me as being it is very, very uplifting.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. I think that it raises an interesting question though, because like one of the things I struggle with sometimes is separating the person from the art, right? And I mean, obviously on a level where we're performing together in the likes of the Brownbread Mixtape or at other shows around the country, you know, you're going to know the artist quite well, and so it's kind of very hard to separate that part, and in some ways that's quite good. But when you get into people who are that elevated, where so somebody tells you such and such an artist is actually a bit of a bollocks, or you see them do something pretty improper or uncool in public, how do you find that? Like, I find it hard sometimes to separate the fact that Mel Gibson is a horrible anti-Semite from his work. Now, his work was never mind-blowingly brilliant, but I would refuse to watch anything with him in it as a result now, you know? Do you know what I'm getting at?
I do, but as far as Van Morrison is concerned, I would say that, you know, because I've read biographies about his life and that, and it's tragic and it's quite sad that the man has had actually quite a kind of a tragic life, considering like that he has all the success that he has had musically and financially and whatever. But I really do not try and go there. And even the latest story, like last year, it was just, I just didn't want to read it because that's just so sad, man.
And a lot of it is sensationalism, probably as well. You don't actually know the true story at all about these people, and you want to put these things on them sometimes as well. And I wasn't really specifically even talking about Van Morrison, but I think there is that thing where you hold somebody in high regard as an artist, and it's sometimes you don't want to hear that other side of it as well, perhaps. And I think that's probably where I was coming from. But it is interesting. Well, listen, one more sort of thing on influences and inspirations, and then we'll go to you're going to read us a poem. Is maybe just in terms of creative process, was there any one piece of advice or one thing that somebody said to you that kind of stood out along the way? Is there anything that's really kind of gelled really well with you?
a friend of mine said to me, and it's going back, I was struggling at the time, this would be over 20 years ago, and I had this thing in my head that, okay, each new piece has to be totally different, and it has to, and can't be borrowing on anything that I've just, the previous project. And he said to me, Fergus, you know, Van Gogh did use yellow more than once, you know. So yeah, that was huge influence. It took a weight off my shoulder. I was just, right, okay, you know, and it's. But I mean, it definitely was a problem for me. Like, I mean, I was in knots trying to, okay, how do I avoid having any reference to what I did the last time in my next job?
And making it brand new every
single time. And then by the time I did get to the point where I realised it was okay to use yellow more than once, I already had a serious back catalogue that I could go back into, and I could take out and different stuff off in different directions.
Right.
You know?
And even at that point, did you look back at that previous body work and realise that you maybe were using yellow more than once, even unbeknownst to yourself, kind of thing? Do you know what I'm getting at?
I do, exactly, I do. The thing was, like, that obviously it was the same story, because I've been telling the same story for over 30 years.
Yeah.
So that remained the same. So I was used, so that was constant.
Yes.
And yeah, there were certain tricks that I was using again, but I was trying desperately hard not to. But then once I got the license to say, well, you know, you now have this body of work there, and you can go and you can plunder that for the rest of your life. You've enough there to keep you going. You know.
That's great. That's great. I think that's a bit of advice everyone should take. You can use yellow more than once. I like it. Great. Well, you're going to read us a poem by Paul Casey, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right.
Let me just hand you the book there. And the title of the poem is Home, More or Less. Maybe just tell us a bit about why you chose the poem.
I chose this poem because it actually, in a very, very strange way, it reminded me a little bit of a song by Shel Silverstein.
Oh, very good.
Carry Me, Carry, a beautiful, great songwriter who could write a song, a 3-minute song, and tell a huge epic story in 3 minutes. And even without cramming a whole lot of words in either, like, you know. And so when I read this poem by Paul, it reminded me of Carry Me, Carry. So here it is. Home, more or less. There lies all the time in the world in the stone of a winter doorway. The city has its own dream and talks in its sleep softly, a low drone of summer bees in harmony somewhere far away, vibrates just where my sleeping bag meets the ground. Wings ache, have forgotten their purpose. Rest is the only prize now. And soon in the dark morning, having only rediscovered stillness, the promise of that other world stirs, sweeping away the oh-so-close nirvana from this womb of generous sleep. I will return soon, soft stone, to whisper into your tired ears a blessing for that soul I may never meet who left this fruit and steaming tea.
That's terrific. And that's from Paul Casey's book.
That's from Paul Casey's book entitled Home, More or Less.
Home, More or Less, great. And that's published...
Salmon Poetry.
Salmon Poetry, who are a fantastic press, who have published previous guests on this podcast. Colm Keegan, Sarah Clancy has a book called Thanks for Nothing Hippies, which is great as well. There's loads of stuff there. It's well worth a look. And Paul is a great contemporary poet of ours as well. Thanks for reading that. Just a few questions actually on the poetry thing before we kind of reach towards the end of the podcast. Could you describe, because you would come with a very different perspective, obviously being relatively new to this poetry scene or whatever you want to call it, could you describe for people what's happening or what they would expect from a poetry performance show, like a slam, or if they went to the Brownbread Mixtape, or if they went to one of these other nights that's going on around the country? Like, I find it very hard because I'm quite embedded in it on some level, but what would you describe it as, or how does it kind of, I don't know, I'm not even sure what the question is, do you know, like...
Okay, well, let me look at it this way for a second. I had no idea what to really expect with this poetry slam, and then I've been to 3 All-Irelands now, and so basically you have people getting up on stage, and the format for the competition is 3 minutes and 3 minutes only. If you go over 3 minutes, they blow a bell and they suck blood out of you. And it's very, very entertaining. The people are obviously, they've come from a background of reading poetry and interest in writing poetry, and then the performance end of it adds a whole new dimension to it, in the sense that it's animated.
Yeah.
And as distinct from possibly stilted, where you would have an evening of poetry reading and people get up and they read it out of books.
Yeah.
And
which I find crushingly boring.
Which I can find crushingly boring as well.
Yes.
That's for sure. So there is more of an immediacy with the performance poets. As my daughter says, you know, Dad, a lot of slam poetry isn't very good poetry. And I said, darling, I realise that. Your father isn't stupid. I know it's only muck savagery dressed up to look like poetry. But I don't care. I enjoy it.
Yeah.
Or I enjoy what I do. Other people are coming from, obviously, a poetry background. I don't at all. That's why I'm a bit of a novelty, but people have been very kind to me. They haven't basically run me out of town, because
I think it's a welcoming community overall. You know?
I think it is, yeah. I mean, certainly the performers are. The other side of it, a little bit more closed shop and a little bit more, I don't know. Maybe and to be quite honest, I don't understand. You know, I don't have the tools to be able to write poetry, so I don't know the effort that it takes what to do.
I think the nice thing about poetry is there's not really rules, and if you think there are, you're in the wrong game. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think, you know, it's like any of these kind of things. If you start putting sort of rules and elitism on it, then it suddenly seems to lose its flavour.
Well, I read a book last year, The Ode Less Travelled by Stephen Fry.
Oh yes, I've heard of it.
It's an instruction as to how to write poetry, and basically, according to Stephen, and I'd have time for Stephen now.
I would too.
But it came as no surprise that he's a poetry snob.
Right.
And he, between the start and the finish of the book, he outlined all the different poetry techniques, basically. And if you're not writing using these techniques or something, it's not poetry.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll maybe disagree with Stephen on that one. Let's see where we go from there. Then again, he is a bright man, but perhaps he's got a different point of view, and we can respect that, I think. Great, we're just going to pick your music selection just before we close out the show. You've picked a song by Fia Rua. We're going to play called Falling Time. Maybe tell us why you picked this Fia Rua song and what it is that you like about it, or what you like about Fia as an artist.
I've never heard anything like this guy before. There's something about him I can't put my finger on, but it's a voice and songs that I haven't heard before.
Yeah.
And straight away, that hugely interests me. And but he has great stage presence. He's very, very strong, and in his delivery, and I like the songs there. He's not overly complicated with his songwriting.
No. But they're very direct.
They're very direct and they're very strong.
Yeah. I think he has a voice unlike anyone I've heard before.
I don't know where the voices come from. I
really
don't.
It is genuinely, because it genuinely sounds otherworldly at times to me. You know, there's folk, there's trad, there's rock, there's a little bit of everything in there. So, well, great, and I'm very happy to play him. He's a terrific performer and musician, and this is a recording of Fia Rua performing at the Brownbread Mixtape at our show last year, and this is the title track from his album Falling Time.
Hey, it's falling time. Well, I used to think that I was fine based on the smiles I received from my friends. It's fallen time, I messed you up when you were mine. Fallen time, oh. crazy time, it's a crazy time. I'm getting old and no one lying beside me as I fall to its share of rotten wood, yeah. It's a crazy time, it's a crazy time. To waste away is such a crime. Crazy time, it's a crazy time. Hey! Ooh. Yeah, well, it's springtime, a winter time, autumn time and summertime. They all feel very sudden when a year moves like a day. Oh, flowers go up and then they die. Hey, birds grow old and then they fly. It's falling time, falling time. Oh. For the world will spin and that's the thing. Hey, no one knows who's gonna win. It's a messed up time, a fallen time, yeah. For it's a lunchtime, it's tea time, it's news time, it's war time, it's fallen time, fallen time. Hey, yeah, it's fallen time, fallen time. Oh, everybody, yeah, it's fallen time, fallen time. Oh, yeah, it's fallen time, fallen time. Yeah, it's fallen time, fallen time. Yeah, it's fallen time, fallen time. We're all fucked, sing along. Yeah, it's fallen time, fallen time. Yeah, it's fallen time, fallen time. Yeah, it's fallen time, fallen time.
And that was Fallen Time by Fiorua, and his album Fallen Time can be picked up online and at most of the good record shops that still exist in this world. Okay, well, it's nearly time to go, Fergus. I just wanted to ask, is there any plans for the show, the Tell Me Lies horse show, to come touring or to Dublin anytime soon?
The plan is that it will come to Dublin before the end of the year.
Great. And we can probably keep up to date on that probably through the likes of the Brownbread Mixtape and through people like the Glower Sessions and Stephen James Smith's channels as well.
Exactly.
And we'll get the word out to everybody who's interested in
Perfect, yes. And everybody do come along.
And absolutely.
Have a great night.
Of that there will be no doubt. I would also venture a guess that we'll have you on the show again before the year is out. Have you any other plans, any other interesting projects on the horizon?
Writing a show for children at the moment with poetry and stories.
Fantastic. And what's that going to be?
Sorry, what is it going to be?
Yeah.
Basically me doing a show for children.
Fantastic.
Now I'm actually illustrating the poems as well, which is good fun.
Wow.
But that's actually for... I'm now writing for my grandchildren. Like, I mean, it was
amazing.
30 years ago I was writing songs and poems and stories for my children, and now I'm doing it for my grandchildren, which is brilliant.
Is that something you'd bring to schools then, or is it just to play for the grandchildren in the front room kind of thing?
It's to have some sort of a product, to be quite,
Sure.
or have a range of products.
Sure.
Like, out of any one particular piece that I might compose in my head, I could get a song out of it and a story. I could get a children's version out of it, and I could get a spoken word poetry version out of it. 4 or 5 pieces out of the one piece. This is economy of use in that sense, right?
Yeah,
so that a particular audience, a particular audience, that I can have a bucket load of stuff there that I can choose from.
Great.
So that there will be something that I can put on a program of stuff here tonight, and that will suit hopefully the audience. So it's
Great.
a question of putting all this stuff together and having it there.
Great. Well, folks, I cannot recommend Fergus's performances strongly enough. Keep an eye on our Facebook, our Brownbread Mixtape Facebook channel. Keep an eye on other folks like Nighthawks at the Cobalt Cafe, and the Glore Sessions, and other sessions around the country. I don't want to be completely Dublin centric either. There's shows in Cork and other places where Fergus has played before. If Fergus is out touring, we'll let you know about it. You really must see him for yourselves. And all that remains is for me to say thanks a million, Fergus, for doing the podcast. It's been
Bless your heart, Kelly. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Great stuff. Thanks a million. We'll catch you all next time on the podcast. Cheerio. See ya.
A hen, a doe, a three, cattle egg.
My blood is boiling for Ireland. My blood is boiling for Ireland. Ireland, Ireland, Ireland. In Ireland, my blood is boiling for Ireland. Connis to talk to.
Tom make a ma.
I will do a show.
Tommy on shot.
Connis to talk to.
Tom make a ma.
I will do.
Tom make us look.
My blood is boiling for Ireland. My blood is boiling for Ireland. Ireland, Ireland, Ireland. Ireland, my blood is boiling for Ireland. Connis to talk to.
Tom make a ma.
I will do a shot.
Tommy on shot.
Connis to talk to.
Tom make a ma.
I will do a shot.
Tommy on shot.
My blood is boiling for Ireland.